What's going on? What's going on, everybody? If you don't know, now you do know. You're officially tuned in to episode 19 of the HFWB podcast series. I am your host, Clifton Pope, and I want to thank y'all once again for those who are watching right now on YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and subscribe to the official YouTube channel of Health, Fitness, Wealth, Business, and stay in tune with what we got going on. And for those who are currently listening right now on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Google Podcasts, make sure y'all share this with someone you know, share it with someone you don't know, that way they can share it with someone they know. Make sure you stream it, make sure you download it, and make sure you sit down, have a discussion, and talk about the things that I'm about to say, because I'm not just saying the things just to say these things, really. I'm saying this to kind of spark a bit of interest, to light the flame for a nice little conversation, whether it's good or whether it's bad. Hey, just get the topic out there, see what happens with it. And hey, if you want to talk about it, let's talk about it. If you don't feel comfortable about it, hey, that's perfectly fine with me. I'm just throwing it out there and seeing what happens overall. But I will say this, it feels good to be back for another edition of the HFWB podcast series. It feels like it's been forever since I've done the last one a couple of weeks back, but once again, I'm back at it, man. It's been a crazy week. It's been a long week. It's been a draining week, but I still have the energy in me to make sure the HFWB podcast gets going, because without the HFWB podcast getting going, HFWB can't get rocking and rolling, because this is the engine that gets the brand, the business, and the empire rolling. And it also helps people stay in tune with what's going on, and just in case if they didn't know certain things and all that good stuff. The one thing that I could honestly say that kind of blew my mind, that kind of threw me off, hey, I'm excited because, the Lakers and the Clippers are playing later on tonight. And for those who are listening right now, this is Friday, December the 3rd, 2021. So the Lakers and the Clippers will be playing later on tonight. For those who are listening to this before the game starts, or for those who are listening to this after the game is already over and done with. Regardless, what threw me off was whenever, how LeBron James, he apparently entered the health safety protocols for the NBA with the whole positive COVID test he got, which turned out to be a false positive, because he was tested negative twice vigorously, about Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I thought that was pretty crazy within itself, because it leads me to thinking, hey, this COVID thing is a real deal, and it's not off limits to anybody. Anybody can get it, including myself. I'm just truly grateful that I'm fully vaccinated, to where if it does attack me, it won't attack me as much as someone who is unvaccinated. Where am I going with this? Well, I don't know if y'all know about this or not. Apparently, there's a new variant that's in town, or all around the world, slowly but surely taking over. It's the Omicron variant, if I'm saying that right. There's a lot that is still undetermined, unresolved, and it just is full of a bunch of question marks, and we don't know really how deadly the Omicron variant can be. Some are saying that it's not really a cause of concern. Others are putting it out there like, hey, we need to be aware of this. It's even getting to the point where Dr. Anthony Fauci's saying we knew that this was going to come, especially when the cases started to show up here in the country, which I'm going to talk about here in a second. But I want to start off with this interesting statement from the World Health Organization when it comes to the Omicron variant, where they're saying the world should not panic about the new Omicron variant of COVID-19, but it should prepare. How are you going to prepare for another variant of COVID-19? It's kind of a common theme that a lot of people who listen to this podcast already know where I'm going with this. Get yourself vaccinated. Because at least if you get hit with one of these little new variants, it won't put you in the hospital, it won't kill you. And worst case, you'll have maybe some mild to moderate symptoms or something, to where you can just shake it off and keep it moving after quarantining for a little bit and taking the necessary precautions to recover from it. But overall, that's pretty much what the World Health Organization means when they say people should prepare. Prepare yourself to get vaccinated. It's out there. You can mix and match, Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson. It really doesn't matter. Just get yourself vaccinated. That way you don't have to worry about this Omicron variant. It's something that I've talked about with multiple people, like people who I work with at Walgreens, from pharmacists to my own parents. It's like I always come to the same conclusion. You don't have to worry about this as long as you get yourself vaccinated, and as long as you're staying as healthy as you can possibly be. You have nothing to worry about. But the thing that's going on with this Omicron variant, a few details that I found kind of interesting. It's apparently been found in 40 countries. It's unclear if the variant is more transmissible or better able to evade vaccines. So we don't know how quickly this variant can travel, and we don't know if this variant can basically bypass the effects that the vaccine protection is giving us within our bodies. That's still to be determined. Could it possibly overtake the Delta variant as the most dominant strain here in the US and all around the world? Who knows? I mean, that's saying something, especially with the Delta variant accounting for about 99% of cases globally all around the world, if you know what I mean. And like I mentioned a few minutes ago, now we got the Omicron variant here in the US, which isn't really a surprise. It was bound to happen. It apparently started in California about a week or so ago, a couple of weeks, something like that. There was apparently some guy returning from South Africa, which is basically the new epicenter of the Omicron variant, which is where all the cases started happening with all this. And it's funny how it would come to the US based off of someone coincidentally traveling from South Africa. I just find that to be such a big coincidence to me. I mean, hey, maybe that person has some family out there in South Africa and he was returning from a quick little vacation. Who knows? But it's just funny when this Omicron variant starts blowing up in South Africa, out of all places. Now, a week or two later, we have a first case of the Omicron variant here in the country, in California, out of all places, which has had its issues with the pandemic within itself. Now it's about to become the epicenter once again because of the Omicron variant. And it's like, the good news about it, as far as the guy who brought it to California, ironically enough, he apparently was vaccinated. He had like mild symptoms. He apparently is improving from those mild symptoms. He self-quarantined. Everyone he came in close contact with came out negative. So there's not a cause of concern there, but it's just, something to think about, of course. Then apparently, I was reading this earlier this morning, apparently there's cases now in Minnesota, Colorado, and apparently there's even cases in New York, and most of them, from what I've been reading this morning, haven't been too bad. The people have been vaccinated as far as having 2 shots, if not having their booster and everything, and it's just like mild to moderate symptoms, and then they recover, and then they feel better, and it's like, hey, I don't got to worry about this anymore. I just keep it moving. It's just crazy how now we got to worry about another variant, and it's like this pandemic is just never ending, and it's never going to stop. And it's like, and to think, when we were finally getting this under control, finally getting everybody vaccinated, it's those unvaccinated people who I really feel sorry for, and those immunocompromised people who I definitely feel sorry for. They're now going to have to worry about the Omicron variant and it possibly taking them out of this world. Simple as that. But it could all be avoided. It's just pace yourself, get yourself vaccinated, exercise, eat right, do all the necessary stuff to remain as healthy as you can be. Just take it back to the basics, why don't you? And it's funny how I say, you got to exercise and you got to eat right and you got to do all of this stuff, because I got a couple of quick little nutrition tips I would like to share as I transition from talking about Omicron, because that can get a little bit boring and annoying and depressing as all that is. I get all that. So let's make a little transition, shall we? Let's talk about something that I was reading about earlier called Keto Macros 101. For those who are familiar, with the keto diet and all that stuff, there's some people who are using that very effectively to keep themselves in the best amount of shape and have the right amount of nutrition and stuff like that. It's funny where I was reading about it as far as it saying like, carbs are a limit, keep carbs low to enter and stay within your body and stuff like that. And there's a quick little story I would like to share and how a good example can be provided. My wonderful girlfriend, she is currently doing a great job as far as implementing cutting down on carbs tremendously. And the best way you can do that, limit your intake on bread, for example. The moment you do that, the moment you'll make quite a big difference as far as the overall amount of carbs that you do. It's like my girlfriend, she tries not to eat bread during the week, but she'll have a little bit of bread during the weekend, to kind of have herself a cheat day and stuff like that. Where am I going with this? A good example on how you can cut back on carbs is by cutting down on your bread intake. Or if you're going to have a little bit of bread, at least make it wheat bread versus white bread, because everybody knows, well, if you don't know this, white bread is basically bread dipped in bleach and all that, and it's all chemically processed and all that stuff. But anyways, if you're going to eat a lot of bread, eat a lot of wheat bread. If you don't want to consume a lot of bread, cut down on it. That way you can manage your carbs well. Just a little bit of food for thought if you're not aware of this or not. But if you are aware of this, spread the message to someone you know and someone you don't know. That way the message can continue to spread like wildfire, of course. Another thing I found interesting when they were talking about Keto Macros 101, they were talking about how protein is a goal as far as meet your daily amount of goal of protein to, of course, maintain muscle mass. And I've said this before in previous episodes of the podcast, to where if you consume a good amount of protein, you're going to maintain pretty decent muscle mass that satisfies yourself as an individual, because everybody is different. Best way you can do that, I'm pretty sure I've said this before, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of a reminder. Work on consuming lean or low-fat type of meat. What do I mean by that? I don't know. Let's see. 93% lean ground beef. That's one thing I could start with. Another thing I could start with is pork loin and skinless chicken breasts, for example. It's like, you know how many recipes you can make out of those three things alone? And then, hey, you can find yourself something different and you can get your protein intake, and next thing you know, you're going to be increasing your muscle to build your hustle and keep your hustle going, and that's what it's all about. So I recommend you definitely consuming that protein intake. That way you can maintain your muscle mass. That's something I take myself seriously, and I'm challenging you, the people, to do the same as far as another quick little tip as far as that goes. And another thing that's pretty interesting that I found in Keto Macros 101 is that fat is a lever. And what does that mean? It basically means consume enough fat that makes you feel full. Make sure it's healthy fat, though. I know I've mentioned that before on previous episodes of the podcast, and if you've forgotten a good example of how you can consume healthy fats, consume a little bit of fish, eat a little bit of salmon, there's plenty of different tricks and traits to where you can make fish a really, really valuable source of protein and a really, really healthy source of fat, to where it makes you feel full, well, and satisfied. And, hey, snack on some almonds, snack on some cashews, some form of nuts, start cooking with the healthy vegetable oil like olive oil, for instance. Little things like that can make a big difference in making yourself as healthy as you can be, to where you can continue to increase your muscle and continue to build your hustle. And here we go with another quick little transition that I'm doing here. I'm keeping things rolling on the HFWB podcast because I'm fired up today. And there's another thing that I found that I was kind of doing a little bit of last minute research on. Well, you know how it goes as far as taking a trip back to the pandemic, as far as the overall impacts, not just making on our health, as far as every individual health-wise. It's making an impact still to this very moment on the economy, And I was looking at the reports and stuff earlier as far as like the job growth and stuff. Well, apparently the expectations weren't met yet again, which is really not a surprise as far as how much of a dent the pandemic has put on the economy within itself, which is something that still I do not understand why it's not being talked about enough. I mean, this pandemic has literally ripped apart our economy, and it's barely coming back together. And now we got the Omicron variant, which could possibly rip the economy back up once again. Because another reason why that expectations aren't being met in job growth is because, it's hard to attract people to want to work. And it's hard because, what if they don't want to get themselves vaccinated and they still want to try to work and stuff? And then you got to factor all that stuff. You got to factor in the politics sides of things. Because overall, people are realizing that they have options now. They could choose whether they want to work, or if they, as sad as this is I'm about to say, they can choose to live off of the government, for instance, because you'd be surprised on how many people are lazy and rather pick up benefits from the government rather than getting themselves up out of wherever they are, getting themselves out there in this world and getting something for themselves to where they can make it their own, and they can save and invest and build something they can pass on to future generations. I know you've heard that before, right? But overall, that's just a little bit of something I would like to say as far as, the cause of why the job growth isn't being met up to expectations, at least from last month's expectations. What do I mean by that? Well, the monthly payroll report I was looking at that just actually came out today, apparently 210,000 jobs were added to the economy, which is well below the 550,000 job market by Refinitiv economists were predicting. So basically, from their perspective, it was the worst month for job creations this year alone. And it's been pretty good for most of the year, despite the impact the pandemic has had on it, although there has been some spots where there's been some bumps along the recovery, and this is just another bump. Hopefully we can get ourselves back together and get ourselves up to where we want to work, because how else are you going to save to invest to build something out of your money and out of your financial education to where you can get financial freedom if you're not going to at least work for the money first? It's common sense, if you don't work, you don't eat. If you don't work, you don't make money. If you don't make money, you can't save it. If you can't save the money, you can't invest it. And you know where I'm going with this. But anyways, the unemployment rate, though, was at 4.2%, so it means that somehow, even though the job growth isn't growing as much, the unemployment rate is kind of dropping still a little bit. It's kind of like what I mentioned the last episode of the podcast as far as this whole economy being like a little contradiction within itself, because I wonder how come the job growth isn't doing very well, but still our unemployment rate is at 4.2%. That's a little bit of something to think about right there for those who want to look for something to think about. But hey, you got to give it up to those jobs as far as like in the bars and the restaurants and the hotel business, because you got to show them a little bit of empathy, because they got hit the hardest with this pandemic, if you haven't realized it yet. Because it's like, hey, when the pandemic first started, people weren't going out to bars and celebrating like they once did, and people weren't eating at their favorite restaurants at one point, and basically people weren't traveling at all, which led to more people not staying at hotels because of that, and all of us being on that lockdown and the quarantine phase. Let's not forget about those people who work at the bars and the restaurants and the hotels. We need to give them like a tip of the hat and a salute or something, because they got hit the hardest during this pandemic. They were going through some hard times for real. But what I'm trying to say is, the leisure and hospitality, which is basically the bars, the restaurants and the hotels, they got hit the hardest, but they've been dramatically recovering. They added 23,000 new jobs last month in November on top of the 170,000 jobs that they added the previous month in October. So what does that mean? They're making progress, y'all. They're recovering. Things are getting back to normal. Hey, more than ever, people can go and have a drink at the bar with their family or their friends once again. Same with going out to eat at their favorite restaurant, taking advantage of all those restaurant specials and events going on there. And people are traveling once again, meaning that they can stay at the hotels whenever they do travel, and they can find themselves a nice place to stay and a nice place to relax and all that stuff. Which I'm trying to say is that they recovered 7 million of the jobs that they lost during the pandemic to begin with. But they're still well below the 1.3 million below its February 2020 level. As in other words, they still got another 1.3 million jobs to recover from what they lost pre-COVID, which is not too bad. They're making progress. So I want to give a special shout out to everybody who's working in the restaurant industry, the bar industry, and the hotel industry. I feel your pain, I salute you, and I'm proud that y'all's markets are getting back up to par to where y'all can continue to get back on track and save to invest to build something, not only for yourself, but for everyone else around, Despite all that's going on, with the whole job reports and everything, it's still not going to stop what the Fed has cooking up as far as these central banks. I swear these damn central banks, they still plan to scale back a $120 billion program in bonds each month throughout most of the pandemic in order to, they had this little program, let me break this down for those who don't know what I'm about to say. The Feds had this little program. It was like a $120 billion program they put into place in bonds when the pandemic started. And basically, it was put into place in order to keep credit cheap, stabilize the financial markets, and keep everything from crashing and going into full-blown recession or worse, Great Depression Part 2. That's still to come if they continue to scale this money back, which is what they're doing, by scaling back at least $15 billion a month, which means this whole program that's been in place, stabilizing the financial markets and keeping credit as low and cheap as possible, that could all be basically a thing in the past by June of next year, which is crazy because the good old Fed chairman, Mr. Jerome Powell, he said in this little quote that I wrote down, which I find interesting, he said, "At this point, the economy is very strong and inflationary pressures are high. It is therefore appropriate, in my view, to consider wrapping up the taper of asset purchases, the $120 billion programs in bonds is what he's referring to, which we've actually announced in the last month meeting, the November meeting they had, perhaps a few months sooner." So basically what that tells me, Jerome Powell has a little bit of an interesting vision on how he sees the economy. As much of a contradiction it's been, he feels like the economy is recovering enough to where it's like, okay, I'm tired of putting all this money into helping the economy recover. It's time to take this money back and put it into some things that matters to the central banks and to the Feds, which in reality is just all about keeping the money rolling within their little agendas as far as the central banks, the Feds, and all that. And I get it. They're trying to keep the money supply in order for the country to where it doesn't go completely out of whack, because let's not forget now, we still got to clean up a whole bunch of debt because the government likes to swipe things like credit cards and create more debt. So I'm guessing the Feds, hopefully what they should be doing is focusing their attention on that and keeping us from going into a full-blown recession. I mean, like, come on now, we just had the signs. I mean, if I'm not mistaken correctly, I saw a story. Pull up the story real quick as I get ready to wrap up the HFWB podcast here. I found an interesting story here. For those who are watching right now, I'm going live. Yeah, I mean, hey, I just saw something pretty interesting here as far as, hey, the Feds need to start pulling money back because in a way, I mean, the economy is recovering, but at the same time, the government and Congress, they got a bunch of other issues going on. I'm looking at here, apparently President Joe Biden signed a short-term government funding bill into law preventing a shutdown, which wouldn't have been good within itself. The measure will keep the government running through February the 18th. That's wonderful. But the legislation buys Democrats time as they try to raise and suspend the U.S. debt ceiling before December the 15th and pass their $1.75 trillion Build Back Better Act by the end of the year. So as in other words, we got other stuff going on with government shutdowns being prevented with new spending bills to where the government can continue to spend more money because If you haven't figured this out by now, the government is operating like a business because the government kind of is a business. It's a business that keeps the country up and running, and they figured the best way to keep the business, quote unquote, government up and running is to continue to spend more money. Because, hey, they're just obviously trying to erase the U.S. debt, because if they don't do it, obviously people like me and you and everybody else is going to eventually have to do it, which is going to lead to everybody being broke. We're going to be in another recession, possibly Great Depression Part 2. There's a whole lot of things you got to factor into all that, which is why I'm here to remind you once again, you got to make sure any bit of money you have, once you take care of your bills and your taxes and all your living expenses, save it. Don't spend it. Please save it for your own well-being. Save it for your family. Save it for your children if you have children. Save enough money to where you can invest into something to where you feel comfortable with once you get the right amount of financial education. Whether it's stocks, whether it's bonds, whether it's cryptocurrency. And speaking of cryptocurrency, I found something pretty interesting as far as ethereum is basically defying broad underperformance in cryptocurrencies with its recent price gains, reflecting a surge of interest in smart contract platforms that are being rapidly co-opted by the NFT boom. So as in other words, for those who are trying to stack up their money, right, my advice to y'all is to get more into Bitcoin, get more into Ethereum, get more into investing in startup businesses that can give you a nice little return down the road. I can't count how many startup businesses I've personally invested in. I could honestly say as of right now, I've invested in maybe more than 10 different startup businesses, because I know deep down, hey, some of them might not do well, but at least I have those that may potentially do well to recover the losses from the ones that I thought can do well. So my advice, I would say invest in maybe 5 to 10 startup businesses if you can, thanks to like Start Engine, Republic, WeFunder. You invest in 10 startup businesses, hey, 5 of them might pop off and the other 5 may fall straight to the ground flat on its face. You never know. That's the beauty of investing, y'all. Because once you save to invest, you can build yourself a nice little foundation based off of the proper education, the right information, and having the proper foundation where you can put your 10 toes down and you can stand on that concrete and realize, hey, I'm standing my own ground and I got my financial education right, and I finally can be financially free. Because that's the name of the game, is just finding multiple streams of income to where you can basically be financially free. Because who wouldn't want to be financially free and be stuck in the rat race for the rest of your life doing the same cycle over and over again of paying your bills, paying your taxes and all that kind of stuff, and going to school, going to work. Let's break out of that cycle, y'all. Let's continue to save to invest to build, because I'm going to tell you one thing. We're wrapping up 2021, and I'm going to bring out the new course, the Save to Invest to Build course, to kick off early 2022. And I'm going to break this down in complete details for those who are new to this, and to those who want to share this with someone who can need this. Be on the lookout for the Save to Invest to Build course. That's going to be the first official course for the HFWB program that will be coming in January, between I'd say January or March of next year. So be on the lookout for that, because I'm going to teach y'all how to get y'all's money right, y'all. Because at the end of the day, health is wealth, and we all need to exercise in that. And it's funny how I say health is wealth, because that's what I'm all about here at Health, Fitness, Wealth, Business, helping you realize that health is wealth. Because once you get your blood flowing and you increase the muscle within yourself, you'll have the energy necessary to get out there, get up, get out, get something, and build your hustle. That's what I truly mean by that. And I'm going to put together a whole bunch of courses coming my way to, of course, continue to educate y'all on this kind of stuff. So I appreciate y'all for tuning in once again to another edition of the HFWB podcast. I feel like I've said all that I've had to say. I've just been so busy. It's just been crazy. But I want to end this episode with a nice little quick quote that I saw that I feel like some of y'all need to hear. Now, we all strive our best to be perfect, or at least have the perfect life and the perfect situation we can imagine, right? So we need to realize that, hey, sometimes it may not work out like that. I know I'm terrible at trying to have things as perfect as I can possibly have it and have things my way or the highway. I am truly guilty. I am truly responsible for sometimes falling into this trap. But I sometimes need to step back and realize, hey, not everything can be perfect, along with having friendly reminders from the people who I love and care about the most to remind me of that, to keep me from going off the deep end, of course. So I want to end this podcast episode by saying this. Perfection is not attainable, but if we chase perfection, we can catch excellence. Let me say that again, and I want this to sink in, y'all. Perfection is not attainable, but if we chase perfection, we can catch excellence. With that being said, I want to say rest in peace to Mr. Vince Lombardi for that quote. And for those who don't know who Vince Lombardi is, he's one of the greatest head coaches of all time for the Green Bay Packers, won some Super Bowls for them in the 1970s. And he's the reason why the Super Bowl trophy is named the Vince Lombardi Trophy. Those who didn't know, that's a quick little history lesson. But overall, what he's trying to say is, don't worry about trying to be perfect all the time. Just be excellent. That's from what I can take out of that. While we strive for perfection, make sure you keep an eye out for excellence, because it could come your way. Just be ready to catch it and just be great, do you, and do what makes you happy. Don't worry about anything else. That's how I'm going to end the HFWB podcast on this note. I want to thank everybody who's watching right now on YouTube, and for those listening right now on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. So many things coming for HFWB to end the new year and to start off the new year 2022. It's crazy within itself, but overall, for those who aren't aware, I still got my HFWB shirts right here. Hold up. I still got my HFWB shirts right here. I got the HFWB Stay Healthy, Wealthy, and Blessed shirt. And I got the HFWB where we got this on lock. Hit me up on the Cash App, $CP HFWB. I got my HFWB merchandise, $6 a pop. There's more coming along the way on that. As you can tell, I'm rocking my boy Dave Messa's top tier motivation and fitness tank top. Y'all go show some love to him and cop his merch. We're working on big events to start off 2022. And yeah, the HFWB program coming in January through March of 2022. I'm finishing up my first book as well. I changed the title to the book to switch it up a little bit. My first book will now be called What's Wealth Without Work. So look out for the first book I'm going to put out for the HFWB book series, What's Wealth Without Work. I'm about 70% complete with the writing process, so that should probably be out in January of next year. So be on the lookout for that. It'll probably be available on Amazon, and I'll probably have it available on the website, healthfitnesswealthbusiness.com/CP. Make sure y'all check out the website. Make sure y'all check out the HFWB podcast. Continue to download, stream all the episodes. Y'all be on the lookout for the first book, What's Wealth Without Work, coming in January 2022, the first ebook. Y'all be on the lookout for the HFWB program, the first course, Save to Invest to Build course, coming in January to February 2022. There's so many collaborations coming that I lost track of. That let's just say that HFWB is going to be collaborating with some very powerful people down the road. The list goes on as far as what's to come, and I'm just excited, man. Just be on the lookout for what's to come for HFWB. Y'all continue to check out the website, healthfitnesswealthbusiness.com/CP. Make sure y'all follow me on Facebook by searching Health Fitness Wealth Business. Same goes with the YouTube channel, Health Fitness Wealth Business. Subscribe, leave a comment, provide feedback so we can grow together. Be sure to check out my TikTok at HealthFWealthB for the latest and exclusive HFWB updates. And yeah, make sure to purchase my HFWB merchandise. As you can see here, I still got shirts available. Y'all can pay me $6 in cash or cash at me at $CPHFWB. More merchandise coming on the way. I'll officially be launching the HFWB winter line. I got hoodies coming. I got warm-up sets potentially on the way. There's so much more to come with HFWB. You just have no idea. So I suggest y'all stay in tune. But with that being said, y'all stay healthy, y'all stay wealthy, y'all stay blessed, and thank y'all for listening to another edition of the HFWB podcast, y'all. Till next time.